we were going around and we were looking for ice activity to film. We did film some ice activity. We saw ice set up outside of a courthouse, actually illegally parked, funnily enough. And so I actually watched the parking authority come down and go like, hey guys, you're illegally parked out front of this courthouse. I'm sure you guys are gonna like, do what you're gonna do, your ice or whatever, but you can't be parked out in front of this courthouse. And the exact words that was repeated back to me from who heard it, because I didn't hear it, but it was another journalist who I think is credible, who said back to me was, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." As if like, we're gonna do this anyway. This is our job, we're gonna be doing stuff in Minneapolis, but that you're making this harder than it needs to be. That we're not allowed to park here on the space that nobody's allowed to park on. And then they moved to a different parking space that was, it said explicitly on a sign, and I filmed from the sign and then to the vehicle that said for the sheriff. Like this is for like the local law enforcement authority. Very specifically, this is for local law enforcement. So that was interesting. 5 minutes following that, us filming that to the vehicle, they just kind of went off. The proper consensus that I have come to, and when I say proper consensus, what I mean is the truth, because it's undeniable at this point, is that since we have seen a drawdown of 700 ICE, I don't know what you want to, some people use the charge term occupiers, ICE agents, ICE desperados. I don't know. I'm sure that's maybe a Nick Shirley term, but however you view them, they're bringing out 700 of those guys. CBD, Customs and Border Patrol, they're on the way out. Bovino just got booted. He's probably going to be moved somewhere else. Don't think this is the last we've seen of Bovino. And so the majority of the operations we saw today, we really had to scour for. There was a operation at a home that we just missed by like about a minute and 30 seconds. But our colleague over with Fort Fisher and gang, he was able to get some footage. But that was somebody getting to, they were trying to like look at a home, talk to somebody through a window. It was a contained operation. People had rifles out as neighbors filmed and made noise. And so there is operations. We filmed operations. We found operations. We were able to, follow ICE activity around. But it's not what it was 2 weeks ago. It is not what it was 2 weeks ago. It's really it's not really comparable. So 2 weeks ago, all you really had to do, as it was told to me, is you just kind of listened for whistles. And while there is also traffic authorities that use whistles in downtown Minneapolis, which makes that a little difficult, at the end of the day, if you drove around, you eventually would hear whistles. You would eventually see some amount of like possibly the tear gas, and you would be able to find stuff within an hour or so. Today, we had maybe 3 encounters, and each one of them took hours to get. It took hours to get to. So the operation has definitely drawn down, but that does not mean that the operation is over. At this point, there is still more ICE agents in Minneapolis than there are Minneapolis police officers. So there are more ICE agents currently in the city than there are local law enforcement, beat cops and such. That's still, Operation Metro Search is still going on. Homan might have, changed the rhetoric in comparison to Bovino, but, operations are still ongoing. Ricardo's new camera made you look extra sexy. Well, thank you, Santa's little helper. I'm truly been objectified. I am scarred. Dylan, do you feel safer at home confronting ICE, or were you feeling safer in Pokrovsk? Oh, dude, I feel, I'm going to be blunt. I feel very safe. I feel very safe. It's been interesting filming out here because, my operation's pretty independent, but I've been doing, work with other journalists. They've been informing me about what's going on. I've been doing ride-alongs with other journalists, who have local vehicles, helping to save on vehicle costs and stuff like that. Man, it seems to me that the majority of this ICE activity is now happening in the mornings. Okay, I don't want to like, I don't want to, share secret ICE information. No, that's a lie. But either way, ICE is now doing these operations, I think, in a huge concentration in the early morning. I mean, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., really, really early. Before people are out on the streets, I don't know if this is motivated by, they're already not getting much sleep due to the whistles being blown and the drums getting hit at the hotels, and they're already awake, go out early before, or this is either way. I think the method is go early before people are awake, and then it'll be harder for people to stumble upon the operation, make a bunch of noise, maybe form a human chain and stop the operation, impede, document, or do anything that could stop them from detaining and deporting more people, or stop them from, as the view of many locals here, violate the rights of U.S. citizens, detain U.S. citizens, ID U.S. citizens, be masked and enforce law enforcement, ask people for identification when you won't even identify yourself. There's some basic principles, not only about, hey, I have this stance on immigration, but a lot of this is not your job. Your job isn't to go around and ID everybody. The job was targeted enforcement. Right now, the idea from the Trump administration is by bringing in somebody like Homan, you can appeal maybe as an olive branch, but it's really hard for me to see after the shooting of Alex Peretti, after the shooting of Renee Good, there ever being a cooperative relationship between Jacob Fry or the government of Minneapolis more broadly when you talk about the city council, the governorship, anybody in the state legislature, which is Democrat controlled, doing anything to compromise on the basic principles of, we're going to now help you detain everybody and anybody. There might be some compromise when it comes to people with like violent crimes, if that get detained by law enforcement. I could imagine them pushing through that, and it seems that might be the pathway we're going down. But at the end of the day, it's just political suicide. It's the sentiment here is so against the president. That's not to say that there's nobody that supports it, but you can't find people who are out and about saying I support this. And the people that you do find are not the people who live in Minneapolis, it seems. I think a lot of them would be people who are out of town in the countryside who would be the most likely to support it. It's not impossible. It's just, no, I can't find it. No, I've been here since Monday. It's Wednesday night. I haven't been able to find people. I've been actively like going out like, hey, look, please, can I speak to somebody? Anybody? Is there anyone who can speak on their behalf? And not much success. Either way, though, yeah, they're doing heavy concentration operations in the early morning, early morning. And I think this is obviously to avoid the response, because it's already cold, and the idea was maybe the coldness would maybe that could demotivate people. That didn't really work as much. Of course, that's Mother Nature working with ICE. They've signed a DHS contract, I assume. But now there was an idea of, well, if we operate in the early morning, the cold plus the early morning, who wants to do that? Minnesotans, apparently. And the majority of people I'm seeing are not out of staters. The majority of people I'm meeting are Minnesotans. And when it comes to the press, the majority are also Minnesotans and locals. So I think of the press that I saw, I'm thinking maybe like 10 to 20% were people that were from out of state. Now, when I'm talking about press, people like streaming on their phone or whatever, I don't know, because there's a bunch of people doing that. Some people who are just locals, hey, grandma, look at this, I guess. But it's hard to tell. Honestly, I think there might be an over concentration of streamers. It's part of the reason why I'm not streaming on the streets. I think it's not necessary. I think there's other people you could get that perspective from. I think I'd rather work on my documentaries and work on what I know. Okay. So yeah, morning operations. That seems to be the concentration. ICE officers. What can I say about ICE officers from the ones that I've seen? Wait 1 second. I don't know if I should put something on screen. Actually, you know what? Before I say this, because I just saw my colleague in the room like smirk when I said that, so I think he's probably gonna at some point come over here and make a comment. But I did actually want to show the footage from Ford Fisher and Olivia Scootercaster of the stuff that we were actually operating around today. First, let's go with Olivia Scootercaster. Olivia Scootercaster is a Ukrainian American streamer. Not streamer. Well, I guess she does stream, but I would consider her more. I guess the first word I would use for her is journalist, because I really respect what people do here, following police activity, following protest activity, documenting events, not only for the history books, but also I think that the concept of public accountability exists for a reason. And I think that these people work in that capacity that serve a public good, but also, of course, my primary focus is that of the scribe. Okay, I like having as much documented of these events as physically possible, because we know that authorities can lie about events, not only in this country but in countries all around the world. We've seen it over in Ukraine. For example, we've had journalists from this show, this one, be in Kherson when the Russians bomb 8 operations that we were embedded with, and then afterwards say, we're like Azov trying to establish a bridgehead. We're going to destroy the Russian army, so we had to be blown up. And those lies were destroyed, or I don't know if I could say destroyed, because the lie isn't destroyed, because it is there's a counterfactual. Here's the proof. It is more just, it could be, you're just giving people the tool necessary to decode it. Not everybody's going to look at it. And I do worry, because I remember looking at that Telegram post at the time and seeing in the comments, like, there were people saying this is fake, and people just ignoring it, just keeping the post up, and others just continuing to comment as if, oh, don't worry about it. Because to them, that was their trusted source. For whatever reason, they thought that, it was the alternative. They think it's, local, and they trust, their Russian media. Since it was, of course, Russian telegrams that were sharing around our footage and saying that we were like Azov super soldiers or whatever the fuck. Either way, I think it's important, both in war zones, both in domestic disturbances, and when it comes to police activity, people who have the power to enforce law, to be able to document what they're doing, especially when there's been multiple reported high-profile cases of deaths involving civilians, that many see as murder and or manslaughter, and should go before a judge, due to the nature of how Alex Peretti died and the nature of how Renee Good died, and the public interest and accountability. There should at the very least be an independent investigation if it is not put before a judge. Either way, the interest in the government to suppress and move past it by painting Alex Peretti as an assassin makes it so I think these types of people are necessary. And look, it's not just these people doing it. A lot of times it's just locals taking out their cell phones. But I got to give a lot of credit to Olivia Skudakowster from Freedom News TV. I got to say, you come to the United States, you pick up that red, white, and blue. That's what she did. What am I going to do? It's like somebody gets the gas station. What do I call my gas station? I call it USA Supermarket, Freedom News TV. I love the enthusiasm. Here is their filming of ICE operations in North Minneapolis. They blocked the street. They took out rifles. They surrounded the location, and then they went up to the window where the family was hiding inside from the ICE officers that had now gone onto the lawn and property, and they talked through the window before going back to their cars and going away. I will say they went back to the cars and went away after a crowd of neighbors did gather. Journalists came with their cameras, and so whether or not they went away because documentation was provided and it was shown that these people are legal residents of the USA, and they said, well, okay, it's not worth their time and resources, let's go do something else. Whether it is, a crowd's forming, it's not worth it, let's get out of here. And I have been told by a lot of people that it does affect them when they do these operations, that they don't like being bothered, they don't like a crowd forming, they don't like all the cameras, and it can tend to really scare them off, or like I don't know if they would use the word scare off, shoo off, or just frustrate them to the point that it's not worth it. Any one of these factors can push them away. Either way, here is the footage of the operation, part of Operation Metro Surge, and listen to the whistles. This is a constant. Anywhere these operations go, there are residents on different street corners all across the city just waiting in group chats, sending messages around, letting people know, hey, I saw somebody without plates. Hey, I saw a bunch of masked men go this way and that way. They are being hyper aggressive. In some areas, when I say hyper aggressive, I mean hyper aggressive when it comes to their documentation and their due diligence and trying to document this stuff and report it to other people. So those who want to go over there and warn people with whistles that there's ICE activity, as well as in the case of the hotel protests, annoy the ICE officers, even though a lot of people are also just blowing whistles at them to annoy them generally as well. They can go do that, as well as journalists can go and document the operations. Anyway, here is the footage here. Now, I want to make a little pivot here, right? Because there's a lot of stuff I can talk about. A lot of it I'll probably just wait until it's and just put that commentary in the film. But there's a few things I want to concentrate on. And one person I want to concentrate on is that guy right there on the right. That guy right there, his name is Ford Fisher. Now, you guys might not know him if you don't follow a lot of the I would call it, civil society action, protest movements, Second Amendment gun rights marches, or police activity. He documents a lot of the stuff to be the camera on the ground, getting the original source material, not necessarily as like I'm here to cast judgment and be, I'm gonna go and be, this political crusader and say I disagree, so I'm gonna film you in the face. I would document him as I'm here to document the facts as they are, put them in the public display, and let the public sort it out. He cares about things like accountability. He cares about things like certain rights that people have. But when it comes to why he does what he does, it's for journalistic reasons in its purest sense, right? If there is a sort of scribe of the events of American domestic political action, he is somebody I would account as up near the top in quality when it comes to dedication to their craft. Honestly, this is a strong endorsement of the work that Ford Fisher does. Now, he was recently called out by ICE directly called out by ICE. Stalking our ICE officers in your personal vehicle like this shows, like this video shows below, isn't journalism, it's activism. Our officers are out in the streets of Minneapolis conducting targeted enforcement operations on highly priority criminal illegal aliens with horrid track records, rapists, murderers, drug traffickers, gang members, and more. Do not impede or obstruct ongoing operations. Now, I've heard a lot of reports of like crazy driving by ICE. And today I did see ICE directly disregarding local laws. Now, when it comes to things like traffic enforcement in front of a courthouse, that might not seem super significant, but people do notice those types of things. If you have your civilian car in an illegal parking spot as you're waiting to snatch people as they come out of a courthouse, they get away with it. They don't get ticketed. When they get complaints, they say, oh, come on, is it worth it, to the person, as if like they can shoo them away almost. Like, come on. But if a normal person was to do that, could they shoo away a ticket person? Could they say, oh, I don't want a ticket. Don't give me a ticket. Oh, it says it's supposed to be local law enforcement. Don't now, but you come on, cut me some slack. No, of course not. And people don't like that type of indifference, not only to a lot of the feelings of locals, as that has obviously been instigated clearly. I also see John in the backseat, good dude there. He did a good documentary in Kharkiv. I was talking to him earlier today. But it really angers people to talk. 1 second. I keep getting reports of ICE activity. Okay, sorry. It's all just like there's these. We'll talk about this later. We're gonna try to do something on it, but because I'm trying to get a complete, as wide aperture as physically possible. That's my philosophical dedication, as wide as aperture as physically possible. There's these like checkpoints that have been set up by we'll call them activists, right? Because there's a different collection of people, right? Some people call them antifers, activists, and what they basically do is they stop a car in the street and they look at the tag, see if it's associated with ICE, and then they move out of the way, right? That is what you could call interference with operations, right? If you stop an ICE vehicle in the street, that's interference with operations, right? That's interference with operations. That's something that can get you in the back of a car. If ICE violates local traffic laws, violates different problems when it comes to parking tickets or anything, they generally feel that they can get away with it, and the view of the locals is that they don't have a lot of respect for the community when engaging with, right? So if that's the view of the community, the view of ICE should be footage like this is great. If you film our operations, you can see us acting in a way that is cognizant of your rights, that is acknowledging you as a human being, as somebody worthy of dignity and respect, even in your removal from the country. Do something that doesn't make you look like the way that ICE has looked like. Instead, people like Ford Fisher, who again documents the left looking bad, the right looking bad, will document whatever is out there, really. He'll interview Boogaloo boys, he'll interview lefty commies, he'll interview liberals, he'll interview conservatives, he'll interview anybody, local activists, like whoever shows up. And they're treating this guy as if this is activism. This is not activism. It is true that in order to do activism, you need a good stream of information. It could help you, learn. If you find out a politician is corrupt, you can then become an activist, protest against that. But this is journalism. To follow them around and document their actions is journalism. Considering that there have been multiple murders or manslaughter charges or high-profile, regretful incidents in the views of the administration. Either way, people are dying, even in the most pro-Trumpian view, and that is of public interest. And if you are so confident that it's not your ICE officers that are at fault for people dying, then this footage should serve the public interest in both clearing your name and rebuilding public trust. Instead, anybody who films an ICE officer, even the most credible, people like Ford Fisher, where I'll see like a lot of times people who are on Trump's side of the aisle treat him with complete respect because they know that he's not going to twist their words, he's not going to edit their stuff out, that he sees his work like the work of a scribe, man. You ever see those, I don't know if you guys care a lot about Korean history. I'm not super focused in it, but there's one thing that does fascinate me, and it's the royal historians from Korean history that had basically carte blanche to include anything they wanted in the documents used for the history books and teaching, the future, what exactly happened during their terms, to have that knowledge, to keep that knowledge. They saw it as almost like, I don't want to call it like a religious duty, but as their penultimate duty. And so they would include the most embarrassing things about the royal family or members of the royal family falling off their horses, even when they say don't include that. And I think that view of that type of Korean historian or Korean scribe, however you want to describe it, is how I view Ford Fisher. He's not somebody going out there throwing slogans around. He's not getting in ICE officers' faces and going oh, he's not doing anything provoking. He doesn't say anything provocative. He tries to work with everybody to the best of his ability. But when that is called activism, then what is journalism? Is journalism just waiting until the DHS publishes its report, which may or may not be true, and then taking that at face value and running with it? Is that journalism? Is journalism just waiting for the Trump administration to come out, Kristi Noem to come out and say assassination, murder of an ICE officer was about to happen, so 100 bullets had to go into his torso? That's not journalism. That is accepting, that the press corps is meant to sit down in their studio and just wait for the government to tell you what happened. If you do not have on-the-ground journalists going out there and recording everything, then you're not going to get anything. You're just going to have to accept the government at their word, and what it's going to be is the reports from shootings are going to be, here's a police report, here's a police report, here's a police report, here's a police report. And you don't want that. And you know what else is important? Certain journalists like Ford Fisher carry a lot of credibility, right? Ford Fisher has been doing this longer than me. I would even say he's more credible than me just through the fact that he's been able to, he's been at this much longer, right? I think having people like that there is also significant in comparison to just a random person. A random person could have any number of motivations. If somebody proves that their motivation is simply just to document events, that means that you have a more likely to be unbiased retelling of events from the perspective of the person holding the camera. That's why you want those people in the room. And I think just cell phone videos are not necessarily enough, right? But I think a combination of as many camera angles as possible is also good. Because even if you misremember an event and retell it wrong in an interview, the video footage might not necessarily show that. Either way, I think the work of people like Ford is incredibly important. And for him to be described as an activist who is going out there and, impeding and obstructing operation, he doesn't impede or obstruct. Like earlier today, if you look at Ford Fisher's footage that he released as ICE was, again, illegally parked outside of a courthouse, they're breaking the law here. He just sits there and he sits back and films this man. This isn't breaking the law. This isn't impeding. If he was impeding, he'd go up and get in front of the car, do something like that. Does anybody have an example of him doing that? No, they don't. What they have an example of him following the vehicle around, which that's what journalists do, man. Okay, maybe I have a biased view since I am a journalist and I want to give journalists, you know, a lot of leeway to do their job because I think that job's important. You know, I even have maybe have heard Zoggian view about teaching journalists lockpicking and such like that. But at the end of the day, he didn't do anything outside the bounds of the law. He's completely within his rights. This is actually interesting because again, they were illegally parked outside of a courthouse. What we suspect was going on is that they were waiting for a court case to go to finish so they could get somebody from the courthouse. But we really don't know. We just know they were parked outside of it, and then that parking authorities came and told them to move because again, they were illegally parked outside of a courthouse. Here's footage of the man stepping out of his vehicle because all these vehicles are very, very heavily tinted. They mask up all the time. They wear sunglasses, do a lot to conceal their identity. And earlier today, actually, we'll show that footage in a second, but let me just show you this. There was actually quite a bit of footage today and yesterday. We missed something yesterday, but I'll catch that in a second.
How you doing, man? Yeah, no, but we're just gonna move because it's not worth all this. We have the rest of the team inside. And when we talk to the party, like, hey, just move back and whatever. And you're like, people just don't leave the cars on this case. Yeah. Which we're not. We're waiting. Yeah. I just make contact with them, they're waiting. It's gonna be a little bit longer. And we all have and dealing with them. Thank you much. Yeah, okay.
This is not impeding. This is filming. I imagine from the perspective of the person who doesn't want their identity shared, this might be annoying, even though, you know, if you're a cop enforcing the law and you're asking people to identify themselves all the time, maybe you should be able to say your first and last name. Maybe you should be having some sort of public ID. Maybe there should be some sort of public accountability and transparency, that it doesn't just look like a bunch of like masked men from out of town just kind of swooped in without identifying themselves and you know took a neighbor away. That's again, the Trump administration wonders why their numbers are going down in immigration. I mean, I'm not even trying to like make a moralistic argument. I'm just saying like he sets up a situation where he can only lose this public relations fiasco. This, I mean, of course, it's a fiasco for the city of Minneapolis, but it's also been a fiasco for the Trump administration. It's part of the reason why they're drawing down the 700. It's part of the reason why they've given internal instructions telling people like, hey, if there's people blowing whistles, if there's people making noise, if there's people filming or whatever, leave them alone. Do not engage. Again, that should just be standard practice, period. But they're making those declarations clear in internal memos because they understand that the situation is now kind of out of their control when it comes to the. I mean, when you looked at how Bovino was carrying himself, he thought he was going to be in a hype edit. He was moving as if they were about to put like some vaporwave music over him and put some like palm trees in the background and give him laser eyes as he's like throwing tear gas at the crowd, and that was going to be the public perception. Now, I don't know if that is more and more of our political class having their brain melted by the internet and the algorithm feeding them political communities that are insular, so they don't realize how they look to the general public. I don't know if that's just how Bovino has always been, and he's always wanted to exude that. I don't know if this is the type of men that Donald Trump particularly likes. I mean, his position was created by Kristi Noem. Bovino's position when he was like commander of this area, I think the official term for his position, by the way, was Supreme Commander at Large of ICE. It wasn't a position that existed before. One created specifically to bypass the pre-existing positions in the organization. Well, not at ICE, Customs Border Patrol. Sorry, a lot of focus on ICE fishing. Either way, I mean, they're letting the situation spiral, and I don't think that pulling this down is gonna save it. This compromise of, oh, we're gonna pull back 700, we're gonna remove Bovino, we're gonna have DHS and all these feds have body cameras now. this is not going to make up for what happened. Definitely not here. And if they plan to repeat these operations, especially if they use Customs and Border Patrol to do sweeps in the internal of the country in the future, then I don't think we can expect any difference in behavior or any difference in the result. And so I don't see how this really de-escalates tensions. I think in Minneapolis, it's not going to be as intense as it was, but I also think that the damage has been done. I don't think that there's any way that they could get any sort of public trust anywhere within within the Twin Cities or the metropolitan area or the suburbs around it, or really even in general Minnesotan society. A lot of people have turned against it. And those who support the operation, again, are very quiet. I have not been able to really find them that commonly. They exist, but I mean, they're not poking their heads out very often. Where's this other video? Oh yes, this is the other video I wanted to talk about. This was filmed again by Ford Fisher on News to Share. This is the same journalist that I said, hey, this guy is an activist who's obstructing. Here is footage he took the day before they decided that they were going to go after Ford Fisher and call him an obstructionist. And, the obstruction is a crime, by the way. Oh, don't obstruct. That's not just something you throw out at somebody. That's something that you can get charges for. Here is him filming the day before ICE agents pulling their cars on arrest observers. These are people who drive around, who are not necessarily journalists, but drive around with whistles to warn people, to get information out, to communicate in a lot of group chats. Dude, I cannot point it. There's like dozens of group chats and calls that are going on constantly, documenting ICE activity all around the city, letting people be informed, having people go out, kind of figure out what's going on, to let others know, to spread on social media, to put on the ICE tracker website, stuff like that, right? So those are the type of activities that a lot of these observers do. Anyway, guns were drawn on these people, and they were forced to step out of the vehicle. This did create quite a bit of social media discussion, because I think this is the first time a gun has been pointed at somebody since Alex Peretti's shooting. Don't quote me on that. I just don't know of an instance since then where a gun has been pulled on somebody. And not across the country. I mean, specifically within the Twin Cities.
Hey, I need you to back up. You need to back up. Stay safe.
They're pointing handguns at the drivers in the vehicle right now.
Hey, get back. You guys need to stay back. You can record, but you gotta be back.
Get out. Open the fucking door.
I need you to back up a little bit more. Hey, get back.
Hey, get the fuck back.
Back.
All right, turn around.
Yeah. Hey, no, don't get on the road. Stay back over here. Okay. You guys can take pictures, you just can't stay back.
All right.
By the way, I was talking to some of the journalists who've been working here for longer than me, and some of them have had conversations with ICE agents where some of the ICE agents, don't like them, but they still they'll talk to them sometimes about the work, and they'll be like, "Oh, you took that video of me arresting that woman. Oh, that's awesome. I love that video." I've got told that story today. It was interesting. Of course, it's word of mouth.
Burns is
but,
an immoral,
interesting.
morally corrupt, bankrupt man.
Thank you very much for the tier 1 sub, General Mark.
I see your press, you're good.
Check in for ID. That's fine. I see you. I recognize you. Push your creds down. You're fine. If you got creds, pull them out.
I got you. Thank you.
Legitimate, please. We're for AD. Okay. A lot of fake ones out there. So these guys were all threatening us yesterday with handguns. So,
These people are threatening you with handguns?
Yeah.
handguns, like threatening.
We know.
So.
Oh, you mean like with hand symbols?
Pulling them out, trying to engage us.
Pulling out literal guns?
No. Making.
Dude, this is not a particularly effective kid. Is it just impossible for them to have a negative appearing interaction with the public and then not immediately botch the messaging? Like, I think maybe it's honestly, it almost feels like extraterrestrial. Like it's something that's beyond us, something like a butterfly flapping its wing, cause an earthquake in China, something like that. It's like outside of our control. Like Kristi Noem is just gonna say, you know, it's going to be a massacre. You're just going to have Stephen Miller say it's an assassination and have it retweeted by JD Vance, have that message boosted. You're going to say very powerful gun, fully loaded magazine, you know, brandishing his firearm. It's just impossible not to, like, just completely bungle the messaging right out of the. I'm just saying, like, oh, they pointed a gun at us. Yeah, it went like this. You mean with a finger gun? No, with like a gun. Oh, like a real gun? No, like sorry, it's just like, God, man. It feels like they're really the one of the impressions I've gotten is that they really are kind of their own worst enemy. Like, Bovino came into town, made a bunch of noise, threw around tear gas, destroyed PR, destroyed the image of not only Customs and Border Patrol, but Operation Metro Surge generally. We're now seeing some of the worst polling data we've ever seen for the image of ICE and Department of Homeland Security, like negative polling. I mean, a plurality of Americans wanting to see the abolishment of ICE. Whether or not that that one poll extends to the general public, it shows a wider shift against ICE, and it's their own. Not only is it their own fault due to the actions of, hey, we're going to cover our face, and so we're not going to show that level of transparency. We're not going to work with local investigators when we have these shootings. We're going to have leadership that just openly lies when these types of shootings take place, openly lies, openly calls people terrorists right away, just like Trump lied about the Ronald Reagan airport disaster and said it was wokeness. You know, it was DEI that crashed the plane, you know, just throwing out the boogeyman. It's important that you have people here documenting this stuff because, again, man, they will tell you not to believe your eyes. And when I say they, I don't mean Donald Trump. I mean governments, period. But also, of course, Donald Trump. He is part of the government. Yes, this is definitely it. We didn't get to finish the Olivia Scootercaster clip, and I wanted to finish it because there's an interaction she has with an ICE agent here that I thought was interesting because of the term he uses.
Act like cockroaches.
No, you're the cockroach! Get out of our city!
The place that needs to be cleaned off so that people can see.
Oh my God!
Get ready to run back to the car.
So I don't know if you guys heard that, but when they had that back and forth, he basically like almost like shooed the journalist away with his hand and said, "You guys are like cockroaches," but only to be responded to by a local who says, "You guys are the cockroaches. Get out." So, you know, public sentiment, not positive towards ICE age. I would say they would get a frowny face sticker, the city of Minneapolis. Frowny face sticker. Very confident in that assertion.